Hi, I'm Anissa.
I'm Nushy Rose.
I'm Sophie Hannah.
Hi, I'm Fairyqueen Tatiana, and welcome to episode 53 of Ethnically Speaking, the show where we discuss everything affecting the UK's highly melanated communities, from current affairs to pop culture and everything in between. We always keep it at 100, and today we're talking all about the trials and tribulations of the job application process. Job hunting can sometimes feel like a full-time job. You polish up your CV, spend hours searching for roles that interest you, and endlessly fill out application forms. But that's just the beginning. If you're lucky enough to be shortlisted, gone are the days where you meet one or two people responsible for deciding your fate. Instead, candidates are often met with multi-stage interviews, psychometric tests, group assessment days, personality tests, presentations, and more. Do you think it's fair to ask candidates to invest so much time jumping through hoops for a job they may not get? And do you think these tests and activities can accurately demonstrate a candidate's ability to do the job?
Well, it's funny that you asked this because I was literally talking to my friend about this last week because we were talking about how extensive some job applications have become and how almost painfully tedious they now are is the best way to explain it. Personally, for me, and someone who has done a little bit of recruitment, I haven't done massive amounts of recruitment, but I'd say I've done like a year of recruitment. I know that so it almost baffles me, should I say, why the process is so long, because I know when you are recruiting, especially if you're going through a bulk of CVs and applications, sometimes you don't actually even have the time to read all the hoops that you made people jump through. So for me, I just find it like a little bit like, come on, like let's take a break and let's dial it back. I personally don't feel like you need to jump through hoops just to send the job application. Now, when you come to the interview, yeah, I think it's fair if somebody asks you to prepare something, or if in the interview is a little bit more extensive, or there's different stages of the interview. But the general application, all we need is something a little bit that should pique your interest. Okay, this person seems interesting. Let's get them in to expand on everything we've already seen. Not give us like a dissertation on their whole life story just so that they can come in for an interview. And honestly, I think it's unfair to people who are looking for a job. You know that you're probably not the only job that they've applied for. They're probably mass applying for lots of jobs. They don't have the time to sit there and go through this application extensive period for sometimes not even to get a message back to say, actually, your application was unsuccessful, to hear nothing. I don't know about you guys, but you know, when you've spent forever on an application, it's taken you so long, you thought, you know what, I did fairly well on this application, so hopefully someone will call me, and then you hear nothing, radio silence. It's like, it really pulls you down. It's like, I worked so hard on just the application, and you're basically telling me my application isn't good enough. So basically, I'm not here for it at all.
Yes, girl, I felt your pain on that one, Anissa, you know. I felt your pain, girl.
So I also agree with you, Anissa, so much. I think that like one of the things I was looking into, I guess all of us kind of read, was about Myers-Briggs, which is such a popular like psychometric personality test, which basically splits you into one of 16 different types of personality. And this test, which is used by tons of employers, and like 80% of the Times top 100 employers use this test or similar tests as part of their application procedure. The science behind this test was formulated back in the early 20th century by Carl Jung, and is based on mysticism, alchemy, and mythology. And those things, to me, it just kind of seemed, now if somebody else suggested, you know, take this, you know, like this, we should listen to this results of this scientific examination, or these incredible, you know, if we'd done our vaccination test for coronavirus based on alchemy, say, everyone would be up in arms. No one would take the vaccine. There's so many things that are wrong with this test being so popular. And with this test in particular, okay, so I used to enjoy, obviously I worked very hard, but you know, back in the office days, there are moments that are quite quiet. And one of my favorite pastimes was taking such a test. And so I used to take a lot of these tests, and my results on Myers-Briggs, I've had so many different results. And each time it's almost like a conversation on horoscopes. Every single time you read them, the comments are so general that they really speak to you. And you're like, this is who I am. And the last time I did Myers-Briggs was just before lockdown. And I did it recently. in advance of our conversation today, my results were radically different. And I can tell you, my life has not radically changed apart from I no longer go outside. Which, okay, maybe it is slightly radical. However, I'm still the same person. So that for me is almost like proof that we shouldn't be using these mysticism, mythological tests to hire people or describe people or categorize people or ourselves.
Do you know, I'm going to be Anissa on this one. I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence, guys. Yes, Anissa, I'm gonna come in to join you on that middle line party.
Take a seat, honey. There's enough space for the two of us.
Welcome.
So for me, I don't think it's fair. Let me just say, I don't think it's fair on applicants because I was recently looking for a job and it was a long ass process. Like if it's a job that you really want, it could take days to really make sure that you've hit all the criteria on this checklist that they've given you. Bearing in mind, I have friends who work in various jobs and they do recruitment within those jobs. And they're like, we don't expect to find someone who has everything, but they expect you to answer every single point because they want to show that, you know, you're at least attempting to do that. So it can be very time consuming, especially as you said, Denise, when you don't hear back from people. But if you think about certain organizations, when you're getting in that volume of applications, I can understand for people who are shortlisted or even for the application process, you're going to make it quite intense so that you can kind of sift through the people who don't really want the job. Because there are some jobs I've applied to and I'm like, okay, I'm jobless, so or I was jobless, you know, it'd be good to have some incoming money, let me try, but my heart's not really in it. And I've gotten interviews for jobs like that. And when I haven't gotten the job, I'm like, to be honest, I didn't really want it. But there's other jobs who I'm like, I really like the look of. And I'm like, I'm going to try everything. I'm really going to work hard on this application form. So I can understand that it can sift through certain people. Because if you think about Google, I read that they have 2 million people apply for a post at Google. So the test allows them to break down and sift through the people who are likely. And I say that, I'm going to put in like that word, likely to be well suited for the job. Because it's always a risk. It's always a risk when you hire somebody and you never know if they're going to be exactly what you want.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sophie, on the point of depending on volume. So they do all these psychometric tests to kind of sieve out who they actually want. But I do think it should be job specific. So if it's a job, for example, for a supermarket, I don't think you should apply these kind of methods for recruitment. You could just have people come in and see how they perform on the day. So have different forms of testing techniques for each job. So it needs to be job specific. And also, I think from an applicant point of view, I think it's very disheartening where I don't particularly perform well with like presentations because I can get really nervous and I just like mumble over my words, which is usually what I do. So I think some people have different skill sets. So if the job is more for people who are outgoing, I think you should have more tests that kind of show that side of you. I remember one of the job interviews I did to work at Manchester City football ground. And it's basically, you go for this very big employment day. So they kind of sieve out who could work in a cafeteria, who could work in the boxes. And you have to do all kinds of things. So they kind of put like 100 people in a big circle and asking, oh, who would like to perform a dance or whatever. So they really want to pick out who's got the big personalities and who was more shy and then kind of act accordingly. And they gave the jobs for more introverted people. So like if you want to work at the coffee stand, if you're more introverted, and if you're more out there, you work in the boxes. So I think it has to be very job appropriate.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So to even answer the second part of the question you asked, Tatiana, earlier about like having the test and if they're needed, I think it depends on the role. Like, for example, I've got a lot of friends that work in the medical profession, and often when they have to take a post, they've got to do like an occupational health thing. I think it's like an assessment of some sort. And when I found that, I was like, oh my gosh, so what? Like and they were like, oh yeah, they test like you like physically, mentally, make sure you're just ready for the job. And I was like, oh, that's pretty strong. But then I guess I understand in that role that they're doing, it's necessary. So I think it has to be necessary. Like the industry that I've worked in outside of presenting has been learning and development. And for anybody who knows learning and development, it's not numerically based whatsoever. Okay, the biggest thing you probably do is to manage your budget and your training costs. However, I've applied for learning development roles where they want you to do like numerical reasoning tests, and I'm like, believe in heck, like what? Like, you know, you're just like, oh my gosh. I haven't done math since I was in secondary school, and even then I was barely doing it. So it's like, what do you really want me to do? Because this has nothing, I know that this has no effect on my day-to-day, especially since the job description doesn't even have anything to do with budgets or anything. This is not expected in my role. So what will you gain from me doing a numerical reasoning test? Like, what is it that you're going to gain? Because I've got to do this application. I've got to do the numerical reasoning test. That's for half an hour. So anyway, I did the test, right? But something with the link broke. And so it wouldn't let me submit the test, but it already got half an hour, blah, blah, blah. So I basically was calling their HR lady and was like, hey, well, the test is broken, and so blah, 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 blah. And she was like, oh, that's fine, just do it again. I was thinking, no, sweetheart, I don't have another half an hour to be doing a numerical reasoning test when I didn't want to do it in the first place. I said, no, it's fine, actually. I said to her, no, it's fine. Do you know what? Maybe this is a sign that I shouldn't do the job, and it's fine. I don't want to do the numerical reasoning test again. All the best, basically, is what I said to her. Then she was calling me and emailing me down and basically said, okay, let's just forget it and move on. And I was like, but we always should have forgotten in the beginning, because it had no bearance on the actual role that I was doing. Anyway, I went on to get that role because I had the experience. You didn't need me to do 2 + 2 = whatever just to prove that I could do the role. So for me, the tests just have to be, just like Tatiana said, specific to the role. Like, make it make sense. That's all I'm asking.
I completely agree. So, Sophie, go.
No, go ahead.
All I was going to say is that, so my job before my current job, there were 9 different rounds. And so I had applied before, like 2 years before, or like a year before, and I hadn't even got past like round 2. And so I was like, I really want this job. So I obviously reapplied and went through all these different rounds, and not one single one of those rounds was relevant to the role. So the first round was like a CV round, fine. I think we all agree that round makes sense. The second round, you were interviewed by a robot. And you guys experienced this?
No.
You were interviewed by a robot. It was horrendous. So you go on, this is like pre-Zoom era. This is like some kind of portal. And so I arrived at the portal, and once the interview begins, like, you can't leave. So, and it only goes on once. So I like press play or whatever, and literally a bot says, why do you want this role? And then they film you and you have 1 minute to give your answer. And obviously they don't respond to anything you're saying because they are a bot. And then it'll be like, tell me about your CV and experiences. And like, you do the same thing. And like, this goes on for an hour. And then finally the bot says, thank you, that's enough. And site like hangs off or like goes elsewhere. And that round to me was so, I mean, obviously it was impersonal, but I was also very confused. Anyway, with that round in particular, fast forward like 2 years, and I'm at the same company, and they're hiring again for this program. And all these videos have come through from the bot round. And this was the greatest fallacy on earth, because they were desperate for anyone in the company, because they didn't have enough time. They were so under-resourced. They're like, hey, like, will you do me a favor? Do you have a spare hour? And like, get anyone you know in the company to review these bot videos. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, I do have a couple of hours spare. Like, I'll do this for you. I said, what are the criteria? And they were just like, if you like them, if they get on with the bot. And I was like, get on with the bot. And they were like, yeah, if they get on, if they don't feel phased, like, that's the type of person we're after. Somebody who acts normal even when the situation isn't quite right. And I was like, this is just not right. But anyway, that's what I was going to say, because honestly, like, that experience, I was like, all these rounds, are they actually meant to stop people who aren't passionate about the job applying for the job?
Nushy, please tell me they pay you lots of money. Please, because
no, the salary was very low.
You don't have to say what it is, but if you're gonna put me through 9 rounds and I'm gonna be dedicated through them all, like, I better be earning serious. No, I'm serious, guys. I better be earning serious money, because I only have so much patience. Like, if it's getting to like round number 5, I'm gonna be like, I'm like, this isn't even worth my time. Like, I'm just gonna apply somewhere else, because that sounds insane. Like, I applied for a job in the charity sector. recently. I'm not going to say what charity it was because you guys will know it. And to be honest, I didn't want the job because it involved a lot of overseas travel. And I was just like, I've done that previously and I'm not really sure that I want to travel that much overseas going forward because it takes a lot out of you. Especially even if you, and it was to an exotic place. It was like, yeah, I'm not going to say where just in case anyone's watching, but it was to a really nice place. But still, I'm like, I've done that before, gone to really nice places for work. And because it's work, you're not seeing the sights or anything. You're going there to sit in their office, do the work, get back on the plane, come back home. So I stayed up. I was applying for 2 jobs on this day. And I did the job that I really wanted, applied for that first, and that's the job that I got now. But then I applied for the other job because I'm like, do you know what? You need to kind of hedge your bets, get out there, and apply for things. So I was going to apply for this job and it ran out just before midnight. So I was just like literally typing up my CV, like editing my cover letter, like, oh, let me edit. I went to submit it at like 11:59 and the site had already taken down the application.
No.
And I was so mad. Not even because I specifically wanted the job, but I'm like, I stayed up till midnight doing this. Like I had a 16-hour day that day because I was doing various stuff for uni and stuff. And I'm like, I was just like, no. I emailed them the next day and I was just like, look, your site got taken down 2 minutes early. I want to submit my application. So they were like, no problem, send it in, which I was very surprised by because from LinkedIn, they already had 200 plus applications because I thought they were going to say no. But for me, it was about the effort that I had put in. So I sent it in. I heard back from them the week saying, we really want to bring you back for an interview. I was just like, oh, okay then. So then they were like, it's going to be like this group interview where we're going to give you like a scenario that you need to work through on the. I was just like, this sounds like a lot. And they went, and plus after that, you're going to have another 10-minute slot to give us a 7-minute presentation on this, that, and the other. And they want you to present on it. And I was just like, all right then, okay. So went for the group interview. There were like 15 people on one Zoom on a Teams call with all these faces, and we got separated into subgroups. Then they gave you a scenario that you had to work through as a team. And I was just like, this is a lot. Then I had to finish that. Then I went on to my separate presentation interview, and 2 minutes for them, they're like, you got 2 minutes to finish, and if you don't finish, we're going to cut you off. I was just like, okay, did that now. They called me back and they were just like, we really want to take you through to the next stage. I was just like, okay then, all right. I'm following the journey. I'm like, okay, it's not the job that I really wanted, but you know what? Beggars can't be choosers. So after that now, they said, I went, what do you want me to prepare for the interview? Don't prepare anything.
Oh.
Lies. Such a lie. I was just like, okay then, no problem. So that morning, like when I had the interview, and they were like, it's the next day. There was no time in between, which I thought was a bit sneaky because I'm like, literally, this is we didn't even know if we were going to get taken through to the next round. And now we're getting under 24 hours to kind of prep for a part 2, which they say don't prepare for. So I still did preparation, went through the questions. And the next day I was having a really good rapport with them, answering the questions, blah, blah. I think I've done pretty well. Only for them to call me like the next day and been like, there were some things that you just forgot to say. Yeah. And in my head, I was like, for the section that you told me not to prepare for. What?
No.
I was just like, but I'm very nice. Well, if I do say so myself, I was just like, thank you so much. I hope you find the right person, blah, blah, blah. So my thing is, they put us through this entire process. And this was up until Christmas Eve last year. It was so close. I'm just like, why would you put people through all of this process just to kind of to find what it is that you're looking for, but really just take the most out of people? And I personally think since the economic crash, since we went into recession a few times and jobs have become so scarce, over the past years, we've seen employers really step up the process because people are hungry for a job. Back in the day, you only had to give in a CV, and now they know people are desperate. They'll do anything. And I think that's why we're in the position that we're in now.
Yeah, I just want to say, as I've said, I've done a bit of recruitment before, right? And I've been on the other side of it where I've been asking people to do some question mark things is what I'll say, especially for roles that weren't even paying well. But it was kind of like it was what was given to me to give to others. And I always felt bad, like, damn, why am I making them do this? Because, so for example, right, the company that I was working for, I want to give too many details, but they were theatre-based They were a theatre-based retail company. I'll just say it like that. So they just wanted people that could speak to customers and also had a bit of a flair to them, right? So there would be like 3 stages of the interview. So one, you do your CV. No, there's 5 really. You'd given your CV, so they'd review your CV. Then you had a telephone interview. Then the first interview is where you had to basically, it was a group thing where you picked a picture card, and it could have been like the moon, the stars, the sea. Then we said, make up a 1-minute play about the moon, the stars, and the sea. Right, so then after the role play, we would then move you in to it was called like talk about something, whatever. I'd give you a card with a random topic on it, and I'd ask you to speak for 1 minute non-stop about this topic, and it would be about the most random things, like if ears were on your elbows, what would life be like? It was some incredibly random stuff. Then once that was all good, I would then give you a product, like you know how people give you a pen, and I'd say, sell me the pen. And I just sit there and let them sell me the pen. Then after that, if we liked them, we would then move them in again for a further one-on-one interview. And then after all of that, we would give them the job. But this was only for like a retail sales position. So I did used to feel bad because you've got these like 16, 17-year-olds or even older people. And it's kind of like, this is just a retail sales position. Like, why the hell am I doing so much? And, you know, to our narrative, we had to our defense, we had a particular customer service. So we needed a particular person who was willing to do things like this. So it made sense. But I felt sometimes for people that were slightly embarrassed who came to a job interview in a 3-piece suit, and now I'm asking them to do a role play, like they could have been great sales associates, but we would have never known because they felt reserved. We put them in a situation which had nothing to do with their role. So I did feel bad for that. But then I just had to flip it on the head and say, you know, one of my interview rounds, they made me host a dance competition. And I was completely out of my element. Like, what the hell is going on? I had to host a dance competition to Run DMC's Tricky. And I was like, I don't know what the hell is going on here. But this was for a learning and development role. So I'm in a head office with all these HR people and they're like dressed up and they're like, okay, so host a dance competition for us now. And then they pull out this. I was like, oh, okay, this is really happening. So I was like, acting like this was dance revolution up in there, and had to host the dance competition. And I rose to the occasion, but the issue is not many people could. And it was a very, that company had an incredibly unorthodox recruitment scheme. And on the other side, I see why you do it because you want particular characters, but it's also not fair because some people don't perform well under certain conditions. And also sometimes what you do in an interview doesn't translate to what you'll do in their day-to-day role. So it's not fair.
Yeah,
I agree.
I can completely see that.
You've made me, like, you reminded me of my most recent interview I had, which was for my current company. And I think, like, actually, I'd never really thought about this, but a lot of the questions that were asked were so unorthodox. So I was asked, which people do I most admire in my life? Who did I think was going to win the UK election, and who do I support?
Boy.
Are they allowed to ask you that, Nushy?
I think that's quite a loaded question.
I thought you weren't allowed to ask about politics.
It was strange, right? Then they asked me, do I believe that opinions are learned or genetic? So it's all these kind of, like, you know, the classic Oxbridge interview questions that are kind of brain teasers, start mind thingy boggling questions that kind of make you think laterally, but actually, like, they were nothing really to do with the job. Or I was asked to describe my 3 best friends and say what they did as a job, their personalities, and why they're my friend. Or like questions about my family, like all these different things. But I would say, almost on the flip side, it was a very unconventional interview. So 2 things, I guess, is one, I actually really enjoyed the interview because it was so unconventional. And prior to me applying, I hadn't had to do any tests or anything like that. And so maybe, I think, Anissa, your example is quite extreme. But if there's like a middle way, which looks, I guess, like how people think or respond to questions, that so both of you can like truly enjoy it, I think that works for me anyway. In that one situation, that's the only interview I've had like that. And the second one was the way I got that job is I had applied because I was quite bored at the job with the 9 rounds, and I'd been there for 3 years, and I saw this job advertised online. And I tried to do the online form and it was so complicated I gave up. And so I went online and found the CEO and I emailed him and said, like, can I meet with you? Are you still looking for XYZ? And that's how that came about. And I kind of feel like when I have applied for jobs in the past, the most interesting ones I've had have come around from meeting people in the local library or, rocking up at their company and asking for a job, And I think those, in my life anyway, the jobs I've had that have come from almost unconventional ways have been a lot more rewarding for me anyway, and kind of almost the anti-test in that regard.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to like the job market, I think it's very important to distinguish between the required or the necessary skills and qualifications and the desirables. And so we need to have less focus on the desirables and really look at what is required. So, even though it's good to have like jobs, like you were saying, Nushy, about unconventional, because that's how I got most of my roles. Because when it comes to competing against 6,000 people, I don't ever, get the job, most likely. But I think it's also important if you don't get the job, is getting feedback. I remember a few years ago, I applied for a job. I didn't get it, but the person who provided me the feedback gave us such a good and detailed feedback. It really helped me. So I think for those who are not getting these jobs, there has to be some elements of how are you going to help this person be successful in the next job? Because there's so many jobs available, but there's so many people unemployed and looking for, opportunities, but not many people get it. So how are we supporting the people who are not getting through these hoops? Because it's very difficult to, get a job if you're competing against a lot of people.
I think that's such a good point that you raised there, because to be honest, when I was first looking for jobs a little while ago, a couple of years ago, I was kind of testing the water, seeing what was out there. I wasn't getting anything back. And I must have sent out like 50, 100 applications. It was so long, so tiresome. But it really worked out for the best in the end because it really wasn't time for me to really move on. But in this past cycle of looking for jobs, I've gotten like interview after interview after interview. And that's really because I have a friend who works in HR who gave me and was like, Sophie, I'm going to help you. She took my cover letter and she was like, I'm going to look over it and I'm going to tell you how to write this in a way that's going to make it stand out to recruiters. And from the time she did it for one of them. And after that, I was like, oh, okay, that's how I put it together. I edited it all. And I was getting callback after callback after callback after callback. And I think it is really tough when you're someone who's looking for a job, especially if you're desperate for a job and unemployed and not realizing how to kind of game the system in terms of writing in the way that's going to really highlight the skills that they really want you to, because it can kind of be a minefield in terms of what it is that they're asking you for. But a question that I had is that, are you guys always 100% truthful on job applications, or do you exaggerate your skills?
I think in the psychometric testing, I would answer the questions the way I think that they want to hear, because I think they don't always want to hear people being truthful. So you have to be strategic with how you respond to certain questions if you do want to get the job. So I think you have to weigh in your options. See, can you merge the truth with what they're asking for? But I would never lie and stretch too far, because if they're looking for examples and you're like, I don't have anything. So I would always be truthful, but I would kind of elaborate more on what I do have to offer and just focus on what I can do or what I do know. But I think it's very important to remember that what are they looking for and kind of showcase that.
Yeah, I've never lied.
I'm way too afraid.
Yeah, I'm not a liar.
I think it's too scary if you get found out if you learn a job application. But I think this is such a gendered thing, right? Because men lie all the time. And
but they do that outside of job applications.
Very true.
Sorry, it was a Freudian slip. Go ahead.
But I completely agree. I do also believe it's in their nature. But it's like, this is the thing, right? Because I was also talking to a friend in HR and they were like to me, why do you never exaggerate, stretch your experiences? And I was like, because I'm so afraid that somebody one day would be like, so, you said you did this, or this, or this, or this. And that's what stops me. And then that, if, this job that you're afraid of applying to, and obviously so many stats built, support this as well. which is like every single man on this earth, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, he bakes one loaf of bread and he says he ran a bakery. It's literally like such a different way of looking at the workplace and like looking at the things we've done. And that holds us back. I mean, I guess, as we know. But I guess one time, so I had this job, and the guy who employed me never really asked about like my prior experience. And again, like, I think it sort of held me back slightly because I'd met him in this hotel, and he said to me, I received this email. I used to work, it's like going back in the day, like I was 23. I got this email that says, go after work and meet this man called Tyrone in the Ham Yard Hotel, which is a 5-star hotel, luxury hotel in Soho. Go meet him there tomorrow at 5:00. Anyway, it had no context, nothing. But anyway, so I went to meet him, everything happened, and basically I'll go into it one day, but essentially I ended up working for him in America. And he said to me, you know, what's your media experience? What's your writing experience? And I had worked for a year for free alongside UNESCO, basically to build up a portfolio of writing. And so one day after work, I was just desperate to get into media, and I'd left uni like maybe a couple of months before, and I was like, I need to do something more creative. And so I went to Hoxton Square and drank a few G&Ts by myself in the square and sort of like galvanized myself into action, and went to this magazine headquarters and said, hey, like, can I speak to the editor? So they said, okay, we'll make you the features editor if you're happy with not being paid. So I was like, perfect, that's absolutely fine by me. Like, I have this actual job. I just really want this experience. So I was doing that. And anyway, so we go on this retreat to the Hamptons. And he's like, I want to introduce you to this guy. And basically, the awkward thing was that the magazine I'd been working for, as I say, like, although I was like features editor, I had only ever been there once, and they'd invite me to the office multiple times after, but I was too embarrassed to go. For whatever reason, I was just like, I didn't want to see them again. So I communicated everything by email or by text. Even if they try and call me, I'd screen all the calls. And so I didn't know anything about these people. I just would provide work for them and they'd put it on their website in the magazine. And so anyway, but obviously like my cachet when I met this guy Tyrone, I was like, well, I'm features editor for X magazine. Anyway, going to this retreat, and he goes, anyway, I wanted to introduce you, but you probably know him already. This is Larry. And I was like, oh, Larry.
Oh.
And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, like, have we met? And Tyrone goes, yeah, he owns this magazine. He's like, he works full time in the office. And he's like, and you were a features editor, right? You must have worked together full time. And like, I was like, oh, yes. I was like, Larry, yes. And like, it was honestly the most humiliating experience of my life. So yeah, just wanted to share that because it does remind me of why you should lie on your CV. I didn't lie, by the way. But
I love a Nushy story, honestly.
I'm telling you, I don't think you lied, because they said that men will apply for jobs when they have 50% of the skills, and women will apply when they have 100. So there is a gap, and that's why more men are out there and bossing it. So my friend said the same to me in HR as well. She was just, when I sent her my thing, she was like, you need to talk up your stuff more. So sell yourself, guys, especially women.
Yeah, I think that's a very important message. So anyone who's applying for jobs, do sell yourself and make sure that you stand out from the crowd. So thank you so much for listening to Ethnically Speaking. Let's keep this conversation going. Do you think it's fair to ask job applicants to jump through hoops during the hiring process? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to hear even more from us, click on the link in the description to subscribe to our email list and get Extra Ethnic directly into your inbox each week. For a summary of everything we spoke about today, head over to unitedmelaningroup.com/ES053. There's a link in the description below. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. We'll see you on Wednesday, where we'll be talking about the sad case of Sarah Everard and Blessing Olusegun, and asking women how they can maintain their safety in the streets. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and keep your distance and stay safe.